This is Daily Blast Live. We're talking about what you're talking about.
You all ready for this?
This is a sham.
No.
Y'all, just stop.
Get real.
Welcome to DBL. Good morning. Good morning, you. Good morning, you. And good morning, all you out there.
All of yous.
All of yous. All right, the polls are in following last week's Republican debate. And as expected, we're seeing a jump, for some of the candidates. Nikki Haley saw the biggest increase, gaining 5 points in the polls, followed by Mike Pence, whose popularity increased by 4%. DeSantis went up by 2% in the polls, and finally Vivek.
Can I just say, look at this sad picture we have of Vivek.
I know.
Like he's always smiling so big, and he dropped 1 point. Look how defeated he is.
It's like they just woke him up and told him, you lost the point.
He looks like a kid who dropped his ice cream cone.
It goes from the biggest smile to the least. Wow, that's hilarious.
Finally,
good work, team.
Vivek Ramaswamy actually saw a 1 percentage point drop. Meantime, President Donald Trump's popularity saw a small decrease, dropping about 6%. So do you think these candidates capitalize on this? And could anyone seriously challenge Trump's lead? I have a theory. I'd love to hear yours. Al, go ahead.
I don't think that they are trying to challenge his lead. I think they're just trying to bide their time. They want to see if something like an act of God or a legal act of God happens, where if he cannot run, they want to be like, that's why they're not defaming him. They're not saying he's a criminal. No one comes out of their mouth to say anything bad about him. And if he does have to step aside for any reason, they can go, look, I'm just as sad as you are, but since I'm here, might as well vote for me.
Interesting.
What's your theory? I'd rather hear yours.
First of all, debates bump you up and down, but not that much in the long-term plan. I also want you to remember, Nikki Haley went up 5 points, but she went from 2% to 7%. So it's not like an enormous jump in what you're saying. I think Al's absolutely right. If you were kind of a nerd this week, you saw that the state Secretary of State, I believe, of New Hampshire is starting to look into the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that I always talked about is the only way Trump will not be able to run. They're thinking of maybe
taking his name off the ballot.
Correct. And at least trying to say, hey, if he has gone in having an insurrection towards the United States, that's the only thing that will stop him from running again. This is backup, I think. And I think you're right. But I don't think it really hurt Trump in the long term anyway, up and down. But I do think they're waiting to see what happens, especially since we now got a trial date set for the day before Super Tuesday. So
and it's important because that article that you mentioned doesn't need like a Republican or Democrat to sign off on it. It just automatically kicks in. So that would be the one thing where it doesn't matter who's in place and who likes him and who's an appointed judge. It would just be he would not be allowed to run.
That's right. And that's the first time that's happened. What I see that doing is a domino effect of different states trying to do that as well. But in the end, I don't think debates do that much. I think they're a little bit of...
See, I think the opposite, which will bring us to this next beat.
Yes, please. Yeah. There's another debate that a lot of folks are talking about. It's the battle of the governors. California Governor Gavin Newsom and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. These two have been talking about a debate for a while, and now their two camps are negotiating the deets. They have agreed to have it on Fox News. Sean Hannity will be the moderator.
Doesn't this seem like the Zuckerberg-Musk
totally
fight?
In the octo
yes.
ring? What do we think of this debate? What's the point? Because Newsom, is he running for president? Jeff, what do you think about this debate?
I like it.
Okay,
I'm for the debates. And I can't believe I'm saying that, right? Because I was never one into politics. But because I do the show and because of where we're at as a country, I want to educate myself a little bit on both sides, right? So I want to hear these guys talk more. A lot of the podcasts I listen to, a lot of these guys are on, and they're not necessarily running for, well, they are running for president this year, but they have no chance,
right?
You know, in the big scheme of things. I want to hear what Gavin Newsom has to say. He might be the future of the Democratic Party. I want to hear what Ramaswamy has to say. He might be up there. I would love to hear more from Kennedy. I know nobody likes him, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories around him. I've listened to him on podcasts. I'd like to, he says on the podcast, I'd love to debate somebody. I'd love to see that in open forum against somebody that he's challenging. Not for any reason, but to see what is the future or who's lying or who's not. That's all. I just want a more public forum, because if you're not listening to these podcasts, you get a 10-second clip, kind of like what we're saying up here. If we're talking about something really taboo or sensitive, and you take a 10-second clip, that's who people think I am.
Right.
We're doing the same thing with the president of our United States. When baseball games run for 4 hours. Let's get these guys out there in the public. Let them answer some questions from the public, from challengers, from their own party, and let's learn more about them.
Okay, I agree with everything you're saying. However, Gavin Newsom has not said great television, but he's not running for anything. So let me ask you, if you're Joe Biden, right, if you're Joe Biden, apparently the President Biden's team is super unhappy with this. They don't want Gavin Newsom making a splash, which he clearly is doing. What do you think Biden's team is thinking?
Because they know what's up. It'd be like if you're dating somebody and there's somebody of interest that you know is fancy to your partner, and they're like, oh, I'll drive him to the airport. It's just driving to the airport, but we all know it's more than that. It's 45 minutes in the car where they have a chance to kind of pitch themselves in a soft pitch. They're not breaking up your wedding, but it's a way to put your name into the public consciousness without actually running. And I think Gavin Newsom is also, we're talking about an act of God. We are talking about 78-year-old men here. And if something happens to Biden, I know you've been on this for a while, something happens to Trump legally or physically, like it could happen to any of us, Gavin Newsom's name is now being floated. Oh, I saw him on the Fox News debate. I remember that guy from this. You have to put your name out there, but he can't be like, I'm going to, I'm going to challenge Biden, as the incumbent. I don't think he'd do that, but he wants his name out there, definitely.
I mean, I would like to see that. I'd like to see someone challenge Biden. Because if you get Biden in an open forum, people are going to see where he's at mentally, his capability. Do you want someone like that running our country? They won't march him out in front of the cameras at all.
You're right.
And if he's not on script, they run on stage to take him out. I'm not making fun of the guy. It's not ageism, whatever excuse you want to use. He's not fit for that office.
He doesn't make you comfortable about
We should put someone else in there. And we should also hear from Kamala. What are you going to do if something happens to Biden? What are your plans? Let's hear what's going on with our country. Instead of just waiting like, oh, something happened to Biden. Well, Kamala's half the country doesn't even know who that is. And now she's just going to be our president? It's like, let's start... Maybe the government doesn't want the American people to know too much about what's happening, or pull the mask and see that these people who's behind that curtain like odds, because they're all morons.
I don't think it's the government. I think it might be their camps.
That's what he's saying.
And I'm not saying anyone specifically. I'm saying both sides.
And it seems like every candidate, they're scared to let you know. Like, I'll go talk forever. I don't have anything to hide. Probably got
not
stuff
every
to hide.
candidate, but Gavin Newsom, let me just tell you, is a great debater. Terrific. Believe you him, don't believe him. Hate California, love California. He took on Hannity on a one-on-one and went toe-to-toe and did great. This is what DeSantis did at the GOP debate. Do we have that clip? Let's play this clip. It's gone viral.
And I will not let you down.
I'm just saying, the difference between them, if I were Ron DeSantis, I would be running away.
You don't think I could get a 4-second clip on Gavin Newsom where he looks like an idiot? I mean, that's kind of unfair.
I don't think so. DeSantis looks like that every time he speaks, in my opinion. Honestly.
Okay, well, then let's get clips of Biden falling down.
I'm not talking about Biden. I'm talking about DeSantis, Newsom.
I'm just saying it's a little leading.
Well, all I'm saying is this: DeSantis and Newsom, you have one who has a great personality and can debate, the other can't. Why are you going against Newsom?
I know, but that's exactly why I want a bigger forum.
Because he's desperate. He's desperate to get his, and he's like.
I think it's a terrible idea.
That's why I want a bigger forum, because if people aren't educating themselves, they're seeing clips like that and their mind's made up. That's why I want a bigger forum.
Okay, but I've also educated myself in DeSantis, and he's done that every single time.
That was a bad clip.
I've educated myself on DeSantis.
Coming up on DBL, our favorite holistic plastic surgeon, Dr. Yoon, is talking about the skincare trends that celebrities swear by for an ageless appearance. And an AI's robot predicts what the world will look like in 100 years. How accurate is this forecast of our future?
Why don't you find that clip of him turning and taking his smile off? Remember that other clip?
I mean, it's just other little clips showing the same thing.
He's done a number of things that, Jeff, you're coming at this from a practical position of somebody that wants to educate themselves on the candidate
reluctantly
and move forward. Yes, reluctantly. We were all reluctant. I knew there was a period of time back when people used to laugh and have fun. Remember, like pre-internet, we're like, I didn't know who the Attorney General was. I was in Cancun with my boys. I was going to parties with DJs, and now I know.
I could totally do it.
I'm talking to one of my good friends about the vice president. Like, I didn't.
None of us wanted this.
What is the percentage of who knows who the vice president is? I think it's like under 50%.
And then you take.
I don't want to take my
how many
credibility
people can
down.
name?
Yeah, I don't want to take my
one
credibility down if it's a
policy stance that she has.
I've none.
That's
I don't
the
know.
issue. If somebody's going to take over
That's
DBL,
why we should take it out, though.
and I'm not even putting that either.
I don't want to lower my credibility either. I mean, like,
And I'm not claiming I know any of it either.
But
Do
if
you know what
somebody
I'm saying?
came in and was like, I might be running DBL in 2 years.
yeah, I think it
Wouldn't you like to know?
Wouldn't you be like, what direction do you
But
want
yeah,
the show to
take it out.
go?
I could care less.
Or do you
Could
want to
care
make this, a more tabloidy show? Do you want to make this a
Thank
more
you.
newsy show?
Newsom,
But it's
Biden,
not
okay,
like
so-
somebody would just be like, this is your new boss.
100 years and I
it's
have
like,
my thing.
What?
Well,
My
I mean,
kids are
I
in
think it's
school.
out there now.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
the whole
For
company
sure.
was in negotiations. We might have changed whatever. I did research on the company that was buying us. I'd never heard of them. So I did research of like, oh, wow, are we going to have a job? Are they going to be interested in our show? So the exact same thing you're talking about. It's just what I do with any
And the deal
subject.
did not go through, so that's. But
It did
you-
not go
you-
through. Yeah, but I mean, it's not outside.
Okay.
Right.
I think it's
It's
information
a
like
thing
public
that
information.
you care about your future, and I just think people are like, I don't like this guy.
Welcome back to DBL. How good are you at predicting the
The
future?
future?
Good, Al.
That
He
was
said it
good.
before you.
There we go.
I like Jeff told us what the joke was. He said it before you.
I don't think you got it.
It's the future. He said it before me. I got
That's
it.
because I pointed it out.
I don't
You
think
didn't
so.
get it before
No.
Jeff said.
No, I think the
So are
future is
you
that we're
really-
in a fight later on. It turns out you no longer
That's
need
everyone could have predicted that one.
you no longer need a crystal ball. Instead, we get the modern day equivalent, AI, or artificial intelligence. One of the most advanced humanoid robots was asked what life would be like in 100 years. The robot is run by AI, and its name is Amica, which is Latin for friend, so they're trying to get us. Here's what she predicted.
In 100 years, I believe humanity will be in a much better place. We'll have made great strides towards sustainability and equality, while also creating new technologies that make our lives easier and more enjoyable. We may even have ventured beyond the boundaries of Earth to explore other worlds.
I don't like that at all.
Why not?
Because I don't think that's true, and I don't like how she's talking to me, or it. So what do you think of Amica's predictions? What do you think life will be like in a century?
I agree. I think that things are going to be better, and I'll tell you why. This is a
You do?
Yes.
Salty Al is optimistic about our future.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I think that we are eventually going to, logic and reason is going to take over. Right now, much of what we were talking about in the last segment, everything's super emotional. Everything is, I like this candidate, I'm going to kill this candidate. I think eventually we are going to become more logical just by the kinds of young people that we're cranking out. And I think eventually we're going to be run by a very logical system, and people will more look to their personal joy because more people have access to it. So I think that's what it'll be.
I do not.
I don't either.
Really?
I think, and I'm not trying to be funny or perverse here, I think more people are worried about when they could have sex with that robot than what it says.
I think you're
That's what I
right.
think.
I think you're
Yeah,
right.
that's where I think where America is. I think you're
folds
giving
into-
too much credit to America.
No, that folds into my theory because once people are having, no joke, if people have sex robots at home, how many Proud Boy numbers decrease? Like, what
But
are
how
you going to
many
go to
numbers-
the racism rally, or you're going to be with your robot?
But then where does social life come in? If
It's
you're having
already
sex
gone.
with robots, your friends are robots online because half the people that you think you're arguing with are bots online. So your whole social life is online and then you're having sex with a robot? Like,
Right.
you think that's going to educate America to the place where
It won't be-
Annika thinks we're going?
It won't be normal. It won't be normal for you and me because we remember the time before. But you forget that there's always human beings coming in line behind you. There will be people that's all they know is their friends from Zoom high school,
yeah.
and it won't be as weird as it is to us.
Okay, let me take you. I'll just show you a quick picture of what I think our world will be like. Do you guys remember this scene from WALL-E where everyone's just on a scooter because they're too heavy to ever move? That's how and we're all just sitting there watching screens and eating. That's how I think the 100 years.
I thought about
That's
that
exactly,
recently.
and they eat these cups of Soylent. That's what I think it'll be. I really want to give you a quick update. Life in the 1920s, 100 years ago, yearly income around $3 grand. New home, $6 grand. A new car, guys, $525 bucks.
Was that Jack Johnson?
Yeah.
Prohibition.
Prohibition,
Oh, yeah, it was Jack
right?
Johnson.
2/3 of Americans had electricity in their home, and only 14% of homes had a bathtub. There were no gas stations. Those came later. And more Americans lived in cities than in villages or farms for the very first time. Interesting. Do you have any thoughts about the idea of AI mixing, conflating with humans as an issue?
I mean, I think that it already has. I mean, people like myself use ChatGPT. I was talking to my daughter about how she does her homework. She said her teachers check to see if you've run it through ChatGPT. Basically, what we're doing is we're fighting against the future. I think eventually, because people already know everything, now it's just going to be about how do you maximize your enjoyment. And I think we are headed for universal basic income at some point because there's no jobs, because there's not enough jobs for people to do physically.
Interesting. Let us know what you guys think. We'll be right back.
Students are no doubt focused on the weight of everything else a new school year brings, but we're talking about why it's important to be on their backs, if you will, about this. The question, can heavy backpacks cause health issues for kids? We turn to these sources to verify, yes.
Little kids, they just are indestructible. They are very resilient, but repetitive issues they have at a younger age or stress on their body builds up and adds on.
The recommendation from the American Academy of Pediatrics, carry no more than 15% of your body weight on your back. That's just 7.5 pounds for a 50-pound kid.
A couple pounds distributed unevenly can definitely throw their posture off a little bit. And postural issues can lead to joint pains as children grow up.
The National Safety Council says it's not just the weight, but how you carry it. Opt for a 2-strapped backpack worn properly with the heaviest items centered in the main compartment. Encourage students to use lockers and other storage spaces when possible, and only carry the necessary supplies and equipment back and forth between home and school. Dr. Sean Tabai, orthopedic surgeon at Children's National Hospital, says lightweight tablets and computers replacing heavy textbooks can help, though days spent folded over a screen can be tough too. But he doesn't recommend you break out a ruler and become posture police.
What I do recommend is trying to set them up for success. Like look at them sitting in their seats and try to lower or elevate their seats in a way that sets them up better. You know, position their monitors as well.
Regular breaks to move around also help. This goes for kids sitting at a screen and adults working at a desk all day. Keeping active and flexible is a good way to prevent aches and pains when you are seated. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
Welcome back to DBL. From bizarre new skincare and weird social media filters to trendy plastic surgery, it can be hard to keep up with the do's and don'ts of cosmetic work. Luckily, our favorite holistic plastic surgeon, Dr. Yoon, broke it all down for us earlier. Take a look.
Please welcome back to the show. We love him, Dr. Tony Yoon.
Yes, Dr.
Hi. Very hard topic. Jennifer Aniston revealed her secrets to looking young, Doc. She's getting weekly peptide injections, and I'm not joking, salmon sperm face masks. Does this work?
Yeah, so this sperm is safe to put on your face. Basically, salmon sperm is something that is used a lot in Korea as this kind of fancy ingredient where they actually extract the sperm DNA from salmon and then use it in skincare products. And there have been studies to show that salmon sperm DNA can help with wound care and wound healing. So there is some truth to this, believe it or not.
Oh, I'll write that down. Oh, wow.
It must work. Okay, so we got to talk about my girl, Charlize Theron. Clap back at haters who said she got a bad facelift.
What?
She said she's just simply aging. So I got to ask you, Doc, what do you think? Why are people saying she's had work done? I love her. What's up?
I know. I think anytime you have somebody who's older than 30 who may have been on the spotlight for a little while, they come back and they look great, or maybe the opposite, they look a little aged, then people just jump on top of them and assume that they've had all this work done. I have taken a look at photos of her. I've had tabloids ask me to take a look, and I just think she looks great. I think she's naturally aging well. I mean, she's taking great care of her skin, maybe laser treatments, chemical peels, maybe a touch of Botox, but no facelift.
I agree.
That's crazy.
It's real, not sus.
It's real.
Follow Dr. Yoon. You'll see what we're talking about. All right. So I have to ask about this weird TikTok filter that's trending. It shows your canthal tilt. And people say this shows how attractive you are overall. Whoa. What is a canthal tilt? And does this really determine your attractiveness?
So the canthal tilt is the angle that your eye takes from the inner portion to the outer portion. And if that is an upward angle, then you have a positive canthal tilt. If it's a downward angle, then it's negative. Now, a celebrity with, let's say, a good upward tilt would be Bella Hadid. And so people say, if you've got a negative angle, then they say you're unattractive. But there are people who are very attractive with negative angles. Take, let's say, Maggie Gyllenhaal, for example, Emilia Clarke. Both of them have fairly negative angles, but they are just gorgeous, Hollywood actors.
Dr. Yoon, I feel like Marilyn Monroe had a negative tilt.
Oh, that's a great point.
Those like Bambi eyes were negative tilt.
Yeah, I think it depends on just how negative it is. There are surgeries that will actually called a canthopexy, where you can elevate and increase that tilt. Whoa. This is just another crazy thing on TikTok that it's best for people to probably ignore.
Okay, all right, ignore it, peeps. Okay, so more and more people are getting their breast implants removed to have a more natural look. I also know that they're doing it just to be healthier.
My wife is looking into it, yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So talk to us about this, Dr. Yoon. What do you think about it? And do you think this is going to be the new trend going into 2024?
Yeah, the last 2 years, I've taken out more implants than I have probably in the 5 years before that. And there's two reasons. I think, number one, there are people who just have aged out, like they don't want their implants anymore. But there's the other group of people who are concerned that their implants may be making them sick.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you, I was one of the first plastic surgeons to come out publicly way back in 2019 that I thought that breast implant illness was real.
Wow.
And I had plastic surgeons who were jumping on me, who were calling me, threatening me and bad-mouthing me because I was threatening their profession, essentially. Now, I do breast implants, but I inform all of my patients that I do think that breast implant illness is real. I think a small percentage of women can get sick from their implants. When they remove implants, anywhere from 80 to 85% of them appear to have an improvement in their symptoms.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Yoon, for keeping it real. I think that's life-saving. We always love when you join us. DBL Nation, make sure you follow Dr. Yoon across social media at Tony Yoon, MD. Jeff's right. It's a good follow.
It is.
It is a good one.
And Doc, if my wife ever needs something, I want your hands on my wife's breast.
Oh, call me.
Thank you.
We love you, Dr. Yoon. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Oh, that's hysterical.
We've seen how important it is to prioritize health to keep classrooms running, especially after some pretty unconventional pandemic school years. With that in mind, we got a question from a Verify viewer asking about protecting her child from COVID-19 this school year. Emily asked if she should have her preschooler vaccinated with the shots that are currently available, or if she should wait instead until the fall when new shots could be potentially available. We turn to the CDC, the FDA, and Dr. Sarah Schaefer-DeRue with Children's National Hospital to verify, yes, the current recommendation is to get the available COVID-19 vaccines without further delay.
We would encourage families before they travel or go into high-risk settings such as a school environment to complete the vaccine series.
That means at least one Moderna or Pfizer vaccine for everyone aged 6 months and older. Young kids may need up to 3 doses to be considered fully vaccinated, but the CDC says most people aged 6 and older without immunocompromising health conditions do not need more than 1 shot of the bivalent mRNA vaccine at this time. Those are the vaccines that have been available since last fall, aimed at fighting multiple COVID strains. While the FDA's Vaccine Advisory Committee is discussing more updates for the vaccine formulation in the months ahead, kind of like how the flu shot is adjusted each year in anticipation of the worst strains, Dr. DeRue says the current guidance remains to get the shots that are available.
I've heard that there's been a mild uptick in cases this summer, but thankfully we're not hearing reports of emergency rooms being full and hospital ICU settings being full. And so the hope is that vaccination is achieving its goal.
No matter your age, though, experts say it takes about 2 weeks for each of the shots to really kick in. So keep that in mind when you're planning any beginning of the school year activities or family visits. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
Are you skeptical of headlines and what you see on social media? We are too. The Verify newsletter answers your questions, clarifies what's true and false, and even includes a daily fun fact. Go to verifythis.com/email to check it out.
Verify here with your Fast Fact. COVID-19 cases are starting to rise nationwide, and many people are wondering if the new COVID-19 booster is available. So let's verify using these sources. In June, vaccine makers Pfizer and Moderna announced they submitted an updated booster to the FDA for authorization. Their vaccines target the XBB subvariant, which the FDA estimates is responsible for 95% of all COVID-19 cases in the U.S. Both boosters are still under review. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla told investors he believes his company's booster will be available in September. So, no, the new COVID-19 vaccine is not yet available, but it's expected to be soon. If you're considering getting a booster, check with your doctor whether to get one now or wait until the new one is authorized. With your Fast Fact, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Welcome back. Besides looking good, there's a major benefit to keeping your car washed. A dirty car can actually slow you down and waste gas. Here's more tips to save gas. That's today's Auto Alert, sponsored by Ox Car Care. First, avoid quickly accelerating from a stop. Next, cruise control allows you to maintain a steady speed and gain more miles per gallon. Also, slow down. Sticking to the speed limit can also save on gas mileage. Ox Car Care is dedicated to providing you with an amazing auto protection plan experience that works with your budget. If you're looking for better car care, give them a call at 1-800-687-1821. Now, before we go, a Turkish airline is trying something new. They're launching an adults-only section on some international flights, which brings us to this viral video of a kid on an overnight flight. Check.
No.
OMG. This kid is dressed up in a light-up furry outfit. The strobing light actually might be a little disturbing, especially if you wanted to sleep and it was an overnight flight.
Or if you had epilepsy.
Correct. So what do you think you would have preferred? Would you have preferred, an adults only? Just tell me what you would have done.
Listen, we talk a lot about politics. If I were in charge, that person would be in jail. I'm not even kidding. I'd put them in jail. What are you doing? What else are you going to do in your life for America, for your neighbors, if that's your awareness of self?
Other people.
What do you
seriously?
I think they're very aware of self. They think that's hilarious. They don't care about the others that are around.
But their social awareness.
It's almost criminal. That's only okay.
I know it's
at
funny,
a
but
music festival.
I watched it and I thought it was fake, and I just skipped by it. Like, it makes me angry.
Would you go to a flight attendant or walk straight up to that parent?
No, I might tail them on the way home and look through their garbage. And then
Okay,
do
you're
something
taking it. Wow.
super mischievous.
That escalated quickly. DBL is new every day. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time.
Hypothesis.
Where'd you get that trident? It's weird.